Hello everyone! Today, amid COVID-19 pandemic and global vaccination effort, we are going to talk about vaccination history in Russia, which started in the times of this lady, Catherine the Great. In the 18th century, smallpox epidemic decimated the population of Europe and Russia. It was easy to catch it, and the disease spared no one. The smallpox death rate was about 40%, which means that a sick person had almost equal chances to live or to die. Every seventh child in Russia died of smallpox. In 1730, Peter II died of smallpox at the age of 14 years old. And then Catherine's husband, Peter III, suffered from a heavy smallpox. His health was ruined and his face was forever pockmarked. In 1768, smallpox again appeared right beside Catherine's throne. One of the most beautiful ladies-in-waiting at the Russian court, Anna Sheremeteva, died of smallpox, and it was unclear how she had caught it and how far the disease had spread. Catherine the Great commented on this situation, quote, "I was advised to vaccinate my son with smallpox. I replied that it would be shameful not to start with myself, and how to introduce smallpox vaccine without setting an example," end quote. Nikita Panin, the head of the Foreign Affairs Ministry in Russia, was entrusted the task of finding a doctor who could vaccinate the Russian Empress. The doctor was found in England. It was Thomas Dimsdale, the author of a recent publication on inoculation, which was a new method of vaccination in those days. Dr. Dimsdale arrived in St. Petersburg in autumn 1768. He brought his son Nathaniel, who assisted him in all the medical procedures. In one of the city houses, a hospital was arranged. It was equipped with everything necessary for inoculation. Rather than today's clinical jabs, 18th century vaccination was far more gory. The new method, so-called inoculation, was as follows. 10 to 15 tiny cuts were made on the skin so that the blood barely shows. And then the spot was covered with a piece of cloth soaked in solution of water and liquid taken from smallpox pustules. The inoculation material for Catherine the Great was taken from a 6-year-old boy, Alexander Markov. At night, sleeping, wrapped in blanket, he was brought to the Winter Palace and taken to Catherine's private rooms. She lived on the first floor, and her rooms were located over here in this part of the palace. And it was over here that the infected lymph from the boy's arm was transferred to the Empress's arm. Immediately after that, the Empress left for Catherine Palace in Tsarskoye Selo. Catherine the Great felt duly sick after the inoculation procedures. She was staying at the Catherine Palace, you can see it behind me, in what we now call self-isolation from her courtiers. Dr. Dimsdale was by her side, keeping a journal of the Empress's condition. In case of her death, Catherine ordered a secret carriage waiting ready so that the English doctor and his son could escape from Russia and avoid lynching. But it all ended well. And in a week, Catherine recovered, and Dimsdale didn't need his getaway carriage. Of course, there were anti-vaxxers back in those days too. Some Russians just had an inexplicable superstitious fear of immunization, while others believed the vaccine spread the disease itself. There were people who thought that the vaccine was created to turn people into cows and bulls. Just like 3 centuries ago, anti-vaxxers today have different biases, and they can't agree on a common stance. In Russia, some anti-vaxxers believe that the vaccines are supposed to implant 5G chips in human bodies, and that Bill Gates is behind it, while the others suggest that the English Queen has a hand in it. Conspiracy theories, you know. In the West, some anti-vaxxers believe that the vaccines spread COVID-19. Anyway, Catherine the Great was back in St. Petersburg, taking congratulations on successful vaccination. On the same day, Crown Prince Paul was vaccinated, also successfully. And immediately after that, 140 Russian noblemen signed up for vaccination against smallpox. To avoid prejudice that something bad might happen, they were vaccinated with the fluids from the Empress's body. As you can easily guess, no one turned into cows or bulls, but into the Empress either. After the events, Thomas Dimsdale was favoured the title of Baron and a pension of £500. Having returned to England, he opened a clinic and a bank. The boy, Alexander Markov, survived smallpox. He also was granted a noble title and a new surname, Ospinny, that translates as smallpox. He was also given a coat of arms and an annual pension from the Russian crown. 13 years later, Dr. Dimsdale visited Russia again. Catherine the Great invited him to vaccinate her grandsons, Alexander and Constantine. The building behind me was constructed as a residence for the kids of Crown Prince Paul, Catherine the Great's grandchildren. You can see the building was connected with the Catherine Palace, and they called it Grand Ducal Outbuilding. So it was here that the vaccination took place that time. By today's standards, 18th century vaccination methods seem extremely unsafe. But it was acceptable back then, because the mortality of those vaccinated was only 2%, 20 times less than of unvaccinated ones. Russia was one of the leading fighters against smallpox in Europe. And while the Russian population was being vaccinated, King Louis XV died of smallpox in France. When Catherine the Great learned about that, she commented, quote, "What a barbarism! Science can treat this disease already." End quote. There is nothing new under the sun, and the humanity is doomed to repeat the same scenarios from time to time. The buildings you can see behind me belong to one of St. Petersburg's hospitals, and this sad angel over here is a monument to all healthcare workers who have died of COVID-19. It was put over here just a few months ago. The sculptor himself, Roman Shustrov, died of coronavirus last May. There are lessons to be learned from our past. Stay safe and everything will be all right.